Hello everybody. It's been a really long time since I recorded one of these, but I figured that the release of the new Dresden Files book was as good a time as any to try to put out a video, and here I am. So I am going to start reading 12 Months, and I'm super excited. I took the time over the holidays to go back and reread Battleground. And the only thing that I wish is that I had actually taken the time to go back and reread more of the books, because I will, as a full disclaimer, say that I have definitely forgotten things. So when I was rereading Battleground, there were plot points and people and things that came up where I thought, oh no, I know that this is really important and I'm not entirely sure why this is really important, but I at least have the broad strokes after going back, rereading, crying all over again about all the things that happened, being really sad in a good way, reading the Christmas short story. It was a good time over the Christmas holidays, but I am super excited to get into 12 Months. I guess before I start, I'll just talk a little bit about my expectations. So the only thing that I know about this book is the little blurb. I haven't read anything about it, any interviews, any questions, anything. I'm going in totally blind, so if there's been any leaks, information, whatever, I do not know what it is. My expectation going into this book is that this is going to be a more human story, and I think I said this when I finished Battleground for the first time. I think I mentioned that I thought that we were going to, after how epically proportioned the last book was, that I felt we were going to go back to a quieter, kind of gentler story, not unlike Ghost Story. I thought we were going to go back to the human side of Dresden to see the repercussions in the human part of his life, what was going to happen. And that's still my prediction. I think we're going to follow through plot threads and points that are going to affect Harry Dresden the man versus necessarily Harry Dresden the wizard. But I could be totally wrong, and this could be, another huge epic battle. There's only one way to find out, but I am super excited to read this. This will obviously be spoiler filled. I don't feel like you could do a non-spoiler reading vlog for book 18 or 19 or whatever this is in the series, but I am excited to chat about it, and hopefully there will be other people who are equally excited to read this one. So I will see you after the first couple chapters. Okay, so I've read the first 3 chapters, and just taking a tiny pause, I thought that the introduction was a lot of what I thought it was going to be. So we get to see Harry grieving, which I thought was going to be the case. Get to see that he's not functioning very well, a reminder of the things that he's fighting for, and obviously his first date with Lara Wraith. So this is one of the parts that I was waiting for, and I thought that the date was fine, just like basic things. Obviously, we need to now do the guessing of, is Lara on his side? Is she not? Does she have that thread of goodness in her like she is suggesting, or is it all a ploy? But the part that I found most interesting was the scene with Mab. And I think it makes sense for Jim Butcher to have brought Mab in this way and have her come out very aggressively, swinging for him, threatening his daughter, because a lot of what we saw in Battleground, I don't think necessarily humanized Mab, but made us very pro-Mab, or at least made me very pro-Mab. When I was reading Battleground, and even when I reread it this most recent time during Christmas, I really thought like she catapulted to the top of my favorite characters list. And clearly at no point does Jim Butcher ever make her seem like a good guy or one of the good guys, but she accomplishes so much in that book, and she so courageously stands up for what she believes in, and she's such a big part of the battle that we can't help but fall in love with her, or at least I couldn't help but fall in love with her. And so I think bringing her in at the beginning of this book with such an aggressive, like, you need to do this, I don't care how you do it, or else, and then bringing in that threat against Maggie reminds us of who she is and what she is willing to do and what she is willing to sacrifice. And I think we all, or I anyway, needed that little bit of a reset, that reminder of, you can still be a fan of Mab, but you need to be wary of Mab at all times, because she could, get rid of Harry at the snap of a finger, and she might if she feels like he's no longer serving a purpose. So I'm very interested to see what's going to come. Harry, at the best of times, is not the most diplomatic person. So right now, while he is in peak grieving mode, when he is tired and he is run down, sending him on a diplomatic mission to try to regain some allies is going to be really interesting, I think. Okay, looks like there's going to be lots of little mini updates because there's a lot of things happening chapter by chapter. But first thing is I'm happy to see Fitz back, and it also just solidifies my belief that this is going to be a ghost story-esque book that looks more at Harry's humanity, because we get a character from Ghost Story who comes back. And I know that what happened to Fitz being left up in the air kind of meant that he would probably make a reappearance at some point, but I am glad that he's here. I think that Harry is clearly going to need a human relationship, because a lot of the human relationships that he did have, those people have either gone on to get some sort of divine power or influence, or unfortunately have been lost from his life. So I think that that was a piece of Harry that was missing, and it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses throughout this book and into the future. The other point that I wanted to talk about was just his interactions with Molly, and that kind of builds on the last point that I made. Just Molly is one of these human relationships for him that has unfortunately changed due to that shift in status and power. And it was just a really sad scene where he came to the realization that even though they are technically, they fight for the same person, they're on the same side, they can't be open and honest with each other in the way that they had been in the past. And so I think, metaphorically, I guess symbolically, this is an interesting back-to-back set of chapters to see Fitz coming in, perhaps being that part of Harry's life, and then Molly kind of shifting out and playing a different role in Harry's life. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Molly's gonna be very important to Harry as the series progresses, and by no means do I think that Mab is going to have her completely under her influence or control, or that she's not going to be able to have any say in Harry's life, but I just think obviously the dynamics are shifting. And I always like Molly. Her parts are so good. Just all of the explanation she has given to Harry about him never being wary enough about the women in his life is very true. And he's surrounded by a lot of dangerous women, and there are a lot of dangerous women who are actively involved with the direction that he is taking right now. So he does need to get rid of some of this, chivalrous way of thinking and fully examine these people as allies/enemies, understand what they're capable of, and be willing to follow through on things the same way he would for any enemy or any person who is in his life. So just lots of little things to chat about, but I'm having a really good time reading this so far, and I hope everybody else is enjoying their time with this book, and I will read some more and then come back. Okay, I just finished chapter 11, and it was the first time that I cried reading this. I knew it was gonna come at some point. It was only a couple little tears, but it was just a really emotional chapter, and I think important to talk about. So obviously Harry's grief and whatever that is turning into, whether it is just a complex grief, whether it is depression, whether it is post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever is happening, it was really apparent in this chapter. And Jim Butcher brings in Michael to have a conversation with him, which I always think is important, because not only is Michael the best, but he really believes in Harry and believes that Harry is a good person, which is something that I think Harry really needs right now, because as is evidenced by the wound from the sword that will not heal, I think that Harry is carrying a lot of guilt and is unable to consider himself a good person. And that's something that he struggled with for the whole series. But I think that after the battle, the aftermath, all the things that have happened, that has just compounded exponentially, and he is carrying a horrifying amount of grief. And this was also the second time in this book so far, once it happened with Bear and just now with Michael, that Harry has been unable to talk about Murphy, which is really important. And I see this in real life as well, just doing the job that I do, is that people who struggle with loss, if you're unable to talk about the loss and the person and what they mean to you, it is really hard to move forward. And that doesn't mean leaving them behind, which I think is part of what Harry is worried about, but it's just difficult to take those steps and move forward. And it's just really sad to see Harry like that. I knew that this was going to be a book where he was struggling with his mental health and struggling with his feelings, and obviously was going to be very sad, but it is really sad. I'm having a hard time. So that was a very emotional chapter, and he's got so many things on his plate and so many little mini quests that he's going to have to figure out and kind of push through and do. But just the reminder that Michael believes in him and that he is human, and then just having the dad of that little girl coming in and thanking him for what he did for her, those small little pieces of humanity and those small good things that he has done are really important. And I hope that he is going to see that and be okay. But it's just had a nice little cry for a second. So I'm gonna keep going now. All right, so I'm at chapter 20. A couple of interesting things have happened. So we had the party, the Halloween party at Lara Wraith's with Dracul's entry, and obviously the kiss between Harry and Lara. So two big things happening at once. I wondered if the quest for Dracul was going to be one of these kind of side quests that needed to be figured out, but now he's offered an open invitation. So we'll see how that goes. I don't really know what's going to happen there. I don't have a great prediction because he is clearly much stronger than anything that Harry can handle. So I don't know what direction that is going to go in. The kiss from Lara was very threatening. A lot more tension building between the two of them. We'll see how that plays out. The Monopoly game, against what I am assuming is some sort of hallucination of Murphy. I don't know. Harry's not sleeping a lot. I'm assuming that is playing tricks with his mind. I don't know if this is one of the things that he's going to have to let go of in order to fully move forward. And then we just had in the very last chapter, it was the magic users coming to Harry to tell them that things have been unraveling in terms of normal civilians attacking them. The violence is starting to escalate. And that reminds me of what the conversation between Harry and the outsider at the end of the book, when he said to Harry, I don't need to do anything else. I have done what needed to be done, and now all I need to do is wait for things to unravel. And so we're seeing that unraveling, and Harry is, and I think that maybe this is intentional on Jim Butcher's part as well. So many things are coming at Harry. We're like, okay, we have this problem and this problem and this problem, and they're all just coming rapid fire. And Harry has friends and they're helping him, and that's great, but I think it's going to get to a point where it all escalates to be too much, and that is exactly what he said was going to happen at the end of the last book. So things are definitely unraveling, and I'm getting very nervous because I'm just looking at my Kindle now, this is the 33% mark. So I feel like the intensity is about to increase soon, and I don't know if I'm ready for that. Okay, I'm at chapter 35, which according to my Kindle is almost 60%, 59%. So I've gotten through a bit more and have some answers and more thoughts and more questions. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Important things that have happened since last time is obviously Harry figuring out how to separate the hunger from the White Court vampire, which I really hope it works because Thomas is my favorite character and I miss him, and I want all of this stuff to get figured out so that he can come back and I can read about him and see him. So I'm really hopeful that will prove effective. The second thing that I was thinking about, just from all of the appearances of bigger players and the repetition of the Starborn stuff over and over, and then even just as much as the hunger of the White Court vampires being the influence of an outsider, I'm starting to wonder if the reason that Jim Butcher put Dracul into the last book is because he and Harry are going to have to do something together. I wonder if he's not going to end up being a bad guy to be defeated, but a bad guy to be teamed up with. I don't know. Could not be. Maybe he is really just going to have a fight with him. But I'm wondering if maybe because he's really old and he is also Starborn, he might have some information to give to Harry that he hasn't been able to get from anybody else. So that is one of my hopes. And then the second most important part, which is the part that I just read, is the scene between Harry and the Shade. So this is what I meant when I said there's probably going to be things that I don't really remember and some details are going to make things fuzzy. So I didn't consider the fact that the Murphy he was playing the board games with was a Shade because I didn't really remember the rules for that. I guess in my head, I just thought maybe it was people with unfinished business and she wouldn't have unfinished business. I didn't really know what went into calling them up. But that part was really sad. Like just him having the frank conversation with the Shade, who is definitely not Murphy, who has the memories, but is not the person. And just Harry's, I guess, his exploration of his own grief, the admission of everything that he's been going through, and just the reiteration of the fact that he needs to talk about this with other people and he needs to find a way to move on. And then we obviously have Bear coming in with her very compassionate, like, grow up. grow a pair. So I don't know. Harry says he needs a kick in the butt. That would be my go-to, but hopefully it will work for him, and I'm hoping that we might see a little bit of progression. I am really enjoying all of the parts of this coming together, but it does feel right now still like a lot of random threads, and I think that is hard to avoid when you follow up a book as big as Battleground that has as many loose threads kind of hanging after it, but it does feel less like a very compact, kind of tense, really plot-driven story like a lot of the Dresden books do, and more like an aftermath, which makes sense. So we'll see if one single part kind of escalates into something more intense in the next 40%, or maybe this will continue to just be a kind of a slow resolution of some of those things and a slow exploration of some of those things. But either way, I'm enjoying myself, and I will be back after some time. I feel like Jim Butcher always does this, so I just recorded a clip where I was like, oh, things are okay. I'm happy to be following all of these different threads. Nothing too major has happened. And then a bunch of gargoyles show up, and it just makes me really happy. Sometimes there are just things that come that are so nerdy and cool that I just feel really happy. So I love meeting these little gargoyles. And then, then Harry says, the Spice Goyles, which is both profoundly stupid and also the kind of thing that after 18 of these books I find really funny. So there's that. But I'm so happy reading this part. The last time I felt really happy reading one of these books, something terrible happened right after. So help me, if like 2 pages after this something devastating happens, then I'm turning my back on this whole institution. Okay. They're at Demon Reach and about to do the ritual to release Thomas, subdue his hunger, and then bring them back together. And I would just like to say that I'm very nervous. I feel like not enough bad stuff has happened in this book, which, is not usually a comment that you would have to make about a book, but I've read enough Dresden Files books to be appropriately scared. And I'm just looking for the exact line that Mab just said. When Harry said that he was going to need her to manage Thomas, she said, I know precisely how I will be most useful and why you invited me to participate. I have brought all that is necessary. That sounds creepy and ominous, and I'm very afraid. Well, that was really intense. And bad things, not the bad things that I was expecting, but enough to make me cry because, as I said, Thomas is my favorite character, and his baby being born, just to be taken from him immediately, was heartbreaking. And it's so sad. And when I said that this book was going to be more human and deal with human emotions and repercussions, I feel like this just gets right down to it, because there's been so much about family and care, and God, this is like heartbreaking. Mab. It's the worst. She's great, but also I'm really sad. And Thomas just came into the story, and now he's gone again, and I understand why he's mad at Harry, but just knowing that he is one of Harry's most important relationships, his family member, this is making me too sad. It's been too long since I read one of these books, and I don't know, I'm not equipped clearly to be dealing with this right now, but I'm just heartbroken. I'm done. And crying again. I'm really happy that Thomas came back at the end, and I'm really happy that was where the book decided to end off. But it was just, I don't know if I can do a coherent review, summary, whatever at the end, because it is late. It's after midnight now. I was on call today and couldn't just read as I wanted to. I had to take breaks to go and see people. But it was really good. I was really happy. I think objectively, if I look back and look at the book as a whole, I do think that there was obviously a lot of cover. We knew this was going to be a reaction book to what happened in Battleground, and there were a lot of loose threads and a lot of things that had to happen. And obviously we knew it was going to take place over 12 months, and that just the nature of having a book with that kind of timeline means that you're going to spend little pockets of time in different places. But I think that overall it worked really well. I didn't even talk about the end, the last battle. That was excellent. It was nice to get some of that like Dresden action in, right? I'm all for an introspective novel, and I'm happy to have seen Harry's growth and his journey through his grief and his acceptance and all of the things that happened and kind of came into fruition. But it was also nice to get a fight. And it was a good fight. And I'm very intrigued at Dracul giving him the heads up about the fight. I am now even more curious about what is going to happen. Obviously he probably wants Harry and to subjugate Harry, etc., etc. But I do wonder if they're going to have to work together at some point, or what's going to happen there. But yes, I think that was awesome. 5-star fight for sure. I think objectively, if I'm looking at the book, I'm not sure if it's a 5-star book in the way that some other Dresden books have been in terms of, the story as a whole. Because like I said, it was a lot of disparate parts kind of coming together to give us a reaction, as I said, to Battleground and the fallout and everything that was happening. But there were just so many excellent parts. Each of the tiny threads that was explored came together in really good ways, and there was so much emotion. And it's just, at this point, after having spent, as we all have, 18 books with these characters, I genuinely believe that the act of reading one will be a 5-star emotional experience, because you're finally seeing your friends. You're finally seeing those characters that you love. You're finally getting to step inside that world that you have dedicated so much of your time and energy to. And so that in itself was a 5-star experience. I'm so happy that this finally came out. Do I think that I will give the book 5 stars? I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to have to think about that overnight and kind of, decide what I'm going to do. At the very least, it's going to be 4.5 stars. I mean, it was excellent. I thought it was, a great follow-up. All the things that I wanted it to be. It gave me some tiny answers and lots more questions, which seems, par for the course here. I am really happy that Thomas came back. I'm heartbroken by some of the things that happened, and I'm now just desperate. This is just, it's getting a little bit of the thing that you wanted just makes you want more faster. And obviously, Jim Butcher, take your time. Don't owe anybody anything. I'm very happy to have this book, and I'm not like, screaming at you to provide another one. But it's just made me really want to know what's going to happen next. And so I'm going to have to live with that feeling for a little while until it kind of settles back down. But very happy to have been in the Dresden universe again. Very happy to have spent this time with Harry. I'm very satisfied with the book and where it has gone. And I'm looking forward to listening to reviews and hearing people talk about it, and, people getting to add little bits to their overall theories about what's going to happen in the series. And I'm just glad to have read it, that it's here. And hopefully this vlog was somewhat enjoyable. As I said, it's been a really long time since I recorded anything. So, if it's a jumbled mess, then you'll have to forgive me. But I will hopefully see you with another video soon. Bye.